Geoff's Wonderland.
Greetings, one and all, and welcome to episode 58 of The Wonderland. As always, I am your host, Geoff Healy. I am an Australian carbon-based life form of the humanoid persuasion, musician, amateur barista, vinyl record enthusiast, and, of course, a multicellular organism requiring an atmosphere of about 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen to survive. Now, I say that for the benefit of any extraterrestrials who might be listening and subsequently wondering what the deal is. You know, just in case they've heard my music on Spotify and are considering offering me some, I don't know, kind of gig residency on their home planet. Because, well, you know, you want to be prepared, and you don't really want a situation where, you know, you bring in a guest artist from a different galaxy to play for a month or so, and they kind of drop dead on arrival because the atmosphere there is 93% carbon monoxide. So anyway, look, people of Earth and extraterrestrials, it's great to have you here on board for the 18th episode of the third season of The Wonderland. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a particularly patient person. I think I've said that before. And so with that fact in mind, I'd like to get straight to today's proceedings, straight to the meat. Now, first up, I want to talk a little bit about TVs, in particular, smart TVs. It sounds good, doesn't it? The smart TV. But, you know, like many things in our world today, the more you think about it, the less good it sounds. Like, do you really want your TV to be smart? What if it's actually smarter than you are? And I think there are many households on the planet where that is indeed the case. But seriously, look, if it can do this, and this, on top of being able to entertain you with a combination of great picture and sound, isn't there also a reasonable possibility that it's also doing that, and that without your knowledge? No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have a smart TV and I'm actually really happy with it. But I have to admit to a degree of ignorance as to what my TV is actually capable of. And the fact that it's connected to the internet, obviously, in theory at least, makes it potentially very much more than something on which to watch reruns of Marvel movies, Star Wars spin-offs, cooking shows, and Modern Family. Look, anyway, I'm not going to bang on about it. It's just something to think about. And besides, no risk, no fun, right? What's really interesting, though, is that the people out there who refused the COVID vaccine on the grounds of not knowing what's in it must be, for exactly the same reason, still watching black and white TV sets made in the 1950s. Anyway, moving right along. Ancient civilizations would often attempt, apparently, to conjure up spirits of the deceased using music and dance and so on. And I'm pretty sure that more than a few of us would actually love it if there was a way we could, you know, contact deceased friends and relatives. Now, to expand further on that thought, let's tiptoe quietly into the sacred inner sanctum of suggestion, that crypt of contemplation, that mausoleum of mental meandering. Yes, folks, it's time for us to worship at the altar of alternativity that is theory time.
Yo, you can't know what you can't know. I'm going to tell you what I think I know. I don't know what I know. This is what I know. Theory time.
And welcome to Theory Time. Now, if death is not the end, and I, for one, instinctively feel quite sure, based on no tangible or concrete evidence whatsoever, that it is not, it would seem a complete no-brainer that people who've passed away might indeed be tapping some of us on the shoulder every now and then, so to speak, in one way or another. Now, my late father would, at family gatherings and such, bring out the tea-chest bass and his trusty harmonica. When he was alive, obviously. Meanwhile, I, a piano player of many years standing, have recently found myself learning how to play harmonica and bass guitar. Coincidence? Maybe, or maybe not. Either way, people, I'm now wondering if the urge I had to learn these two instruments might have been some kind of subliminal message from my dad. Maybe he's trying to get in touch. Maybe he has a message for me. What kind of message it would be, I have no idea. Perhaps it's nothing more than, hello, I'm here, wherever here is, or at the very least, something along the lines of, okay, that's enough with the piano already. And that brings me to another issue, and I can pretty much sum it up this way. Should we be afraid of ghosts? Well, yes, we should, but not for the reasons you might think. I'm sure that many of us at some stage have contemplated the possibility that spirits of our late loved ones or friends might occasionally be actually with us, invisibly, in the same place at the same time. I don't know, smiling at us, looking down, and maybe even taking care of us as we go about our daily business. Now, at first, that sounds like a really lovely idea, but think about it. What's to stop them being in the same room while we're naked or doing something that we wouldn't want anybody else to see, living or dead? In other words, they might be witnessing moments which would not have them smiling very much at all. Now, look, I don't know about you, but I, for one, do not want to be ashamed and embarrassed when I meet that person in the afterlife and they look at me and they say something like, I cannot believe you did something that disgusting.
This is what I know. Theory time.
And yes, that's it for today's slightly spooky and potentially quite alarming episode of Theory Time. And now it's time to be alarmed in a completely different sort of way with our next segment, the musical part of the show, and that's Song of the Day. And this one just happens to be one of my own songs, released digitally as a single in the first half of 2021. And it's a song with a familiar theme, namely waiting for a horrible thing such as a bad relationship or a prison sentence or a global pandemic to end so one can get back to leading a normal life. And this track is called Soon.
Soon. I know what you're thinking. What the flop does that mean? And you'll believe it when you see it. Soon. It's always round the corner. When you don't expect it, it's when it will arrive. Soon, you'll be out there, and you won't remember when you were nowhere. Soon, you'll walk down the road with a smile on your heart. You feel it coming, been so long in the dark.
Somebody once very cleverly said that the only point to life is having something to look forward to. And if you were to boil the words of this song down to one central idea, well, I reckon that's it. And also how the closer you get to that something, the more bloody frustrating everything else in your life seems to be.
Soon, it's gonna be your turn. You turn again to show exactly what you got. Soon, going to remind them of all the things you are and all the things you're not. Soon.
Okay, I'm going to come clean with you about the genesis of this song. And for those of you who might be wondering, which is probably nobody, yes, it is written about coming to the end of COVID, which is a subject I've largely deliberately avoided on The Wonderland since the show began, only because I figured we were all sick to death of hearing about the bloody thing.
Sitting watching paint dry. You've been sitting watching grass grow, learning everything on YouTube. And now there's nothing that you don't know. You've been trying to keep your pecker up. You've been trying not to get down. You've been out of it for so long, but you're gonna get into it soon, soon, soon. Well, you'll be out there, and you won't remember anything at all. Not really seeing anyone who's very interested. But now you're out there, now at least you will be soon.
And there it is, soon. And of course, you can hear that song and any of my songs, for that matter, on any of the streaming services, including YouTube, or by going to my website, which is www.geoffhealy.com, where you can stream it and download it and share it completely for free. Speaking of music, I have always found it interesting that some people will judge other people according to the type of music they enjoy, or if you're a musician, the type of music that you play. So with that thought in mind, we are now going to take a sharp left turn and crash right through the gates of today's episode of
Geoff's Thought of the Day. I was thinking about something, I think it was the thought of the day. I think it was the thought of the day.
And welcome to Thought of the Day. Now, over the years, I've become conscious of the existence of what I would like to call musical elitism, or musical snobbery, if you want to put it like that. I first became aware of this when I left Australia to play gigs overseas back in the early 90s, and I quickly discovered that musical tastes in Europe were generally much more broad-minded than they were back in Australia. At least in so much as audiences of any age in Europe seemed less concerned about whether a song was new or hip or not, but instead more focused on whether they actually liked what they were hearing. And meanwhile, back home in Australia, almost anyone between the ages of, say, 16 and 35 wouldn't have been caught dead listening to anything that wasn't current top 20 on the indie charts, and therefore not cool or hip. In other words, anything that their parents might have been listening to. So, is it elitism? Is it snobbery? It is a point of cultural difference. There's no doubt about that. And although I do prefer the less judgmental European attitudes to music, I also kind of understand the Australian perspective. And look, there's no doubt that when you're young, there is an instinct to mostly be into what's now as a means of current self-identification or something like that. So I guess it is pretty normal, on top of which we're all different, aren't we? We've all got different tastes and we all think differently and we all think everybody else is a weirdo. But the simple fact is, folks, that a lot of us do tend to carry a continuing affection for music that we grew up with. And so by using that as a kind of a yardstick, we're usually able to get a pretty good idea of a person's age by the music that they like. Usually. Certainly not always, as I've also discovered. But look, I reckon it's a safe bet that there aren't too many 85-year-olds getting off to the sounds of Justin Bieber, just as the piano stylings of Winifred Atwell would be of little interest to the majority of 19-year-olds. Look, anyway, I'm pleased to announce that I have found a way to avoid this sort of thing, okay? And it's actually really, really simple. You simply profess a love and a sincere passion for music that has not yet been written or performed. Now, this can only succeed in making you beyond relevant in terms of your musical tastes, and therefore beyond any type of criticism from anybody of any age at all. In short, it is a perfect strategy, and one that I recommend you adopt immediately as part of your inevitable quest for a happier life all round. And that, my friends, sounds to me like another Wonderland win.
I think it was the thought of the day.
It certainly was, and that's it for today's show. And I certainly hope you've enjoyed today's ride. And if you have, please leave us a rating and be sure to subscribe or follow the show, depending on what platform you happen to be listening on. And in most cases, you will be alerted whenever a new episode turns up. That is unless you're listening on Spotify. I don't think they do that, at least not yet, and I don't know why. Anyway, this show turns up every Friday. So there you go. Anyway, folks, look, take care out there in the real world until next Friday, next week. And as always, I look forward very much to welcoming you once again to the wilds of the Wonderland.
Gotta get that to Geoff's Wonderland.